I've just noticed a comment in the chat. I think it's from Miss Gourley. So I'm hoping that what we're about to talk about here maybe addresses some of what you've mentioned in that comment there. But that's really interesting. So feedback. I think that the most effective form of feedback is delivered as soon as possible after writing's taken place. It should provide more opportunities for discussion. If possible, read aloud to the teacher or a peer if that's something that they're comfortable with, and ask your group for advice. I also think that good examples of writing can be shared with the whole class, like for example using a visualiser, and I think it's really good to get the class to identify where that particular piece meets success criteria, where it could improve. I think that we talk about that community of writers, and I think that's a really good example of that, really quite powerful. And I always just go along this idea of the fact that, if kids can spot good practice in other people's work, then they can apply it to their own, and that's a good way of checking that that's something that's happening. I also think feedback should focus on strengths as well as next steps and should relate to the success criteria that have been set. That was the focus of the lesson, so that should be the focus of the feedback. And then finally, I just think it is good practice for feedback to originate from a different voice for each chunk of writing, so you get that chance for self, peer and teacher-led feedback at least once within each piece of writing. Again, just kind of anecdotally, the way I used to split my class into three big groups of 10. I think it's really helpful for teacher workload as well when you're only dealing with a one group of 10 at a time. It means everybody gets the chance to speak to you, to have teacher feedback within the one piece of writing, and splitting up into those kind of, even if it's just a very kind of arbitrary beginning, middle and end of a piece, I think that just gives them the chance to independently improve their work, improve their peers' work, and also work with the teacher.
So just picking up on the feedback, this is one useful strategy to provide children and young people a structure to edit their writing. It can be really overwhelming for a young person or a child to go through their first draft and be told to proofread or edit it. But this way gives simple, short, focused opportunities to edit on specific criteria that will help pupils internalise that process of editing. And this can be done in a classroom as a carousel activity where different groups move to different stations with visual prompts for peer or self-editing. Or it can also be carried out, say, as a timed activity. So you may have 3 minutes or so to do that self or peer edit with a specific lens or focus. And these can take the form of a particular focus, such as those suggested on the slide, or can focus on the success criteria, obviously related to the task. This allows the teacher that time to focus on individuals or groups of children for that really high quality real-time feedback. The learner can then act on that feedback if appropriate at that time, or it can feed forward into their next draft or their next writing task. So it's just a really practical way of organising that feedback, just as David also described the way he managed his groups of children and making sure that you're given that high quality feedback.
And again, I'll just reiterate, Nicola, but when we were putting this webinar together, I thought that this editing stations thing that Nicola had come up with was one of the real takeaway, one of the real practical takeaways from it. If I was going back to a class tomorrow, or if I was looking to implement something regarding writing, I would do something like this, because I think it's really slick, really well put together. I also think that if you can get kids into the habit of working in that way, you can adapt this to use it for, you can use this for your success criteria as well. They can be using those stations or placemats or carousels to do that same thing there. So yeah, I think in terms of takeaways from this, that's a really, really useful one.